Hello, everyone, and welcome to this public online seminar on the impact of artificial intelligence on learning and teaching in higher education. My name is Luca Lantero. I'm the head of the ASEM Education Secretariat. Thank you to participate with us today. I'd like to share my initial presentation with you. So, where we are and why we organized that seminar. We are in a process that started in 1996. It's a unique informal platform that involved the 53 countries and some countries on the European side and some countries for the ASEAN side, plus the European Union and the ASEAN Secretariat. The ASEM process is based on three pillars: political, economic and financial, and social, cultural, and educational. And today we are here because we are part of the educational part of the ASEM process. So the ASEM leaders decide that is fundamental to open a dialogue and cooperation in education. Education considering both higher education and school education and vet education as well, all the sector of education. And so they started an ASEM education process, and in 2008 they organized the first ASEM education minister meeting in Berlin. Starting from that meeting, ASEM partner and stakeholder used to meet regularly, and they focused their attention on 4 thematic priorities. The first one is quality assurance and recognition. And this is very interesting because in 2008 is the first process that start to speak about recognition and quality together. The second point is engaging business and industries in education. The third one is balanced mobility. And the third one is lifelong learning, including TVET. Then, during the process, other 2 transversal priorities were introduced. One is the sustainable development, and another, and this is also the reason why we are here today, the digitalization. That are 2 fundamental elements for the dialogue today within the higher education and education in general. Since 2022, Italy took the responsibility to run the Secretariat of ASEM process for 4 years. The current situation in the process and for the period 2022 to 2024 is that one. So we decide to establish 4 expert groups according to different thematics in the process. 1 expert groups on SDGs and education, 1 expert group on recognition and balanced mobility, 1 expert group on lifelong learning and TVET, and the last expert group on digitalization, chaired by Germany. And this is the reason why we are here, because in the framework of the work done by that specific group, we decide, and the group decide to organize that public seminar, online seminar. So thank you very much for the work that you continue to do in the framework of ASEM. I like to give you some elements regarding the next ministerial meeting that will be took place in Malta from 25-26 of January 2024. We will have the possibility to have to hear the different ministers on different priorities regarding the dialogue on education, and to have the possibility to organize bilateral meeting. We will adopt, as always, in those meetings, the check conclusions, and we will present the stock taking report of 2024. But now, I don't like to take more time, and so I give directly the floor to Devi Akrami Flores, the chair of the Digitalisation Group. And so thank you, David, and please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Luca, for this nice welcome, and also a warm welcome from my side to all of you. As Luca said, my name is David Akrami Flores. I work at the German Academic Exchange Service at DAD, and I would now like to give you a brief introduction into the work of the expert group Digitalisation, who organizes this seminar together with the ASEM Education Secretariat. And thank you also to Luca and his team for this support. So the next slide, I think, yes. So the expert group on digitalization was established in 2019 and since then has been coordinated by the DAD. The objective of our group is to promote exchange on the potential as well as the challenges of digitalization and education in both regions, in Asia and Europe. And the meeting of the expert group also serves as a platform for exchange on digital transformation in the ASEM education process, and thereby ensuring that the dialogue between the two regions addresses current and future innovations and transformations in education. Next slide, please. The members of the group are identified and nominated by the ministries of each ASEM member state, and in total, the expert group is composed of 50 experts from Asia and Europe. These are, for example, academic experts from universities and research institutes, digitalization experts from governments or NGOs involved in education, or representatives of student bodies. In 2021, the expert group has published a working paper analyzing the challenges and opportunities of digital transformation for higher education, vocational education and training, as well as lifelong learning systems in Asia and Europe. And since 2022, we have been following a peer learning approach to enable exchange across a range of digitalization topics. One of the meetings, for example, focused on micro-credentials. Other meetings dealt with different formats of digitally enhanced learning and teaching, and most recently, the impact of artificial intelligence on higher education. And as Luca already mentioned, the latest ASEM Senior Officials Meeting decided that the different ASEM expert groups are to organize online seminars open to all interested stakeholders and, of course, also the general public, in order to increase the visibility of the ASEM education process, which is why we are here today. And yeah, since artificial intelligence has an impact on higher education in many different ways, I'm particularly happy that our speakers can provide a broad set of perspectives, ranging from higher education institutions and student representatives to entrepreneurs. So without further ado, I will now hand over to our keynote speaker, Dr. Supatida Prompayuck. She is a strategic coach and lecturer who has been working on digital transformation over 2 decades, and she has worked in different global companies, for example, as program manager Asia Pacific at Google Singapore, where she was responsible for product acquisition and digital product adoption for the consumer and education segment. She also worked in the public sector as an advisor to the Minister of Higher Education in Thailand. Dr. Supa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, let me share the screen. So, all right. Hi, everybody. And it's my honor to be here to join the public online seminar on the impact on the artificial intelligence on the learning and teaching in higher education. So today my 20 minutes will be in a brief, and there's a lot of things happen. So, and thank you very much, David, for the introduction. So I would like to share in so many aspects on what I have a chance to work in digital way, public sector, and also on the enterprise side. So that that will be very interesting for everybody to see. I think everybody already like thinking about the future. So if you're thinking about the industrial revolutions, everybody talk about AI today, but I'm thinking about our age. Think back on when we were young, on the way when the industry or this business is been driving with lots of things in the past. So going back to 17, so I don't think I born yet, but that era we are talking about the stream power, and then we're talking about electrics in the next era. And just a decade or 20 years back then, we talking and we heard a lot about the information technology. And then it's quickly turned that today we have to live and die with AI words. That's what we are spreading around. I just would like to share that in each industrial revolutions, there is the power behind the scene to drive this business. And we can see that a lot of people talking about the AI, and that's how the higher education have to think about that. And that's also, if you think back, it's also impact on the way we manage the education in the university as well. So lots of each stage when the industry change is also related to that what we have to prepare the people for the future. So I think this is another big turn that we have to thinking about. So when we talk about the AI, actually in a in a whole ecosystem, it's not just only the AI, but it's all about the integration of Industry 4.0 that is related to everything. So if you're talking about a robot, if you're talking about drone, I think we see a lot of technology change, but why AI has been mentioned a lot because it's the brain of everything to help people working. So in the Industrial 4.0, we already heard about lots of things, but AI, it seems to be a very popular word and seems to be challenged because it's very close to a human being capability. So I don't think we need to talk about what is AI. So right now, you guys can just go to ChatGPT or even Bard to share, to find the information about it. But what I'm going to discuss next is like how this information come from and how what is all this information that we have to consider and how we can utilize all this technology to related to in the education. But from these two screens, on the left-hand side, you might see this is from ChatGPT. On the right-hand side is from Bard, which is from Google. You may see a little bit of different on the interface that each brand, each technology try to add something to solve the existing problem. For example, as I mentioned, when we find the information, we not even know where it's from. But if you see the highlight on the right-hand side, you may see that the technology try to fix the pain point that the highlight, they have a reference, the source of the reference down there so that we can check the source. But anyway, I think we still need to figure out quite a lot that, hey, is that true? On what is true? Is that the related link? I think there's so many topics to discuss on what we should see in the screen. So for this, I don't think I have to share much about what's AI because I think we already know that the artificial intelligence is the development of the computer system. And I think what we talk a lot is because it's become a very human intelligence like. So the most important part that I would like to share is how it's work. The information we just get like from the previous slide is also based on the information spread around in this world. Starting where we have the internet. starting where the people can start to generate the content. So I think the data input to process to the outcome of what we see on the generative AI, because it's been built to be able to generate and have the creativity. And that's the challenge, that where is the creativity come from, right? So I think when we have the information show on the generative AI, I think from the input process and the output, that's another challenge on how we can build the ecosystem to have the outcome of the information. It's also related to the input of the content generating in this world as well. So that's how we are talking about what's going on right now. The manipulation or whatever the what has happened is also that AI is also bringing from the data they have, from the data that store and then process it. And they try to generate, and that's the capability of the next phase, that they try to generate something based on what they are stored. So that is what happened right now, that you may see a lot of things come from not just only collecting data. So this is how a lot of type of the AI happen, that they try to be like a human-like, to be able to generate the things. So this is the capability that in the business world try to utilize this to help the business working. So
Super.
that's why
One question. Would it be possible to share it in presentation mode? I think it would be easier to watch. Perfect.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, thanks a lot.
Thank you, David. Okay, so, and then when it's come up with that capability, so right now a lot of business already start embracing AI. The reason I have to mention about this, because this is a thing that where us as an educator have to thinking about what is the expectation of the outcome from the university in the future. So you may see that it's not just happened in this year or for the last 5 years. The revolution of the AI has been started for long, as a lot of people already knows. And it's really happened to become the commercialized. And I can share you just one example that it's already happened in some company that already be serious to explore and make it commercialized, to be able to have this proposed to the world. Like, for example, you might heard about some research in the beginning, but right now there's a lot of the product that come up to be able to solve the pain point of the business. And that's how a lot of data and research already come up, that the global AI market is already expected to grow like at least 37% every year. So that means the technology company right now start to invest in AI. So that means the workforce that's need more people to be in the market. Or even a lot of data here in this slide, you may see like a lot of predictions about the global economic impact is even faster than our thought. And some people even in the technology is talking about like unlimited capability, and we not even know yet for the prediction. But you will see that for the economic impact, there's a lot of expectation to get the benefits of the AI. On most important part is most of the companies see that is expect to save the cost of the company. So that's how the business impact is talking about that. And most of the people talking about how the industry or which industry start to talking about is pretty much. So you will see a lot of things happen in banking system, data analytics, the financial, healthcare start to go so fast on this, and also come up with the other market. So that is the part that the challenge of how we can thinking about what is the business segment talking about utilizing AI, and how we have to prepare our people in the future. So there's a lot of things that not going to happen. Most of the things here is already happened, and that's create another gap. Like for my country, there are prediction of the how can we create the AI engineer to be like from 200 to 20,000. So I'm talking about not 10x, we're talking about 100x of the people to be able to close this gap of the workforce, to be able to work together and utilize the AI in the future. So that's the expecting job to be open, and we have to prepare for. So that's in the big picture, and that's come up with the data and the statistic already show about the demand. So I have been working a lot to close the skill gap. So you see like a lot of upskill, reskill, online demand, and there's a lot of people looking around. So I think this is a chance, or even what we can talking about, like how we can also help the people who already graduated. There's a lot of demand and discussion talking around, like, oh, I already graduated at the time when AI is not yet happened. How can we come back to the university and upskill, reskill myself to be able to continue my career path? So there is a research and a lot of people talking around. And this is, I think that for the skill and workforce challenge is come up with a lot of research already show the keyword, like for example, is expect to be used for the personalized learning. And also some people may talking about, is that gonna replace the people workforce? But in reality, there are some research talking about creating a lot of job in the future. So let's see that. I think this is the economic impact graph, that there is a value gain. That means the expectation from the business side thinking in a quite in a positive way, that utilizing AI can help them reduce the cost, create more work, and also looking for the people that have the AI literacy to drive and grow. We're talking about the word lean, and they are expecting AI to be able to help the business. So some people may see this as like a future workforce is AI gonna replace. But in another hand, when you say about in the future, there's a lot of job, even for the truck driver, it's not mean that the AI will replace the truck driver, but we're talking about to be the companion of the truck driver. So each of the job, or even the retail sales, there's a lot of discussion, either it's gonna replace, and somebody talking about to be like optimistic, no, there will be the assistant. So this gonna be the conversation spread around about the AI replacement and the AI as the assistant, right? So I think this is in the near future. We also know that in each segmentation, this is the top ranking of the company we're talking a lot and very impact about the hiring people in AI. Like in technology company, the tech company like Amazon, Google, they are talking about they are the shortage of the people. The finance, as I mentioned, the healthcare, where they are, their goal is how we can utilize the AI to help reaching the goal of for a better health of the people. So there's a lot of mention, and the most important part that talking a lot is about the cyber security, privacy, and all this, because everything is related to data. So all this part, AI is already in a lot of part in the business. For me, as working on the demand side, we are looking for and a lot of position where never be filled yet, and looking for some part of the people to be filled in. A couple things that I would like to mention here is a lot of business already use this to monetize and utilize the data analytics to create the business. For example, for the digital marketing part, we all know that all the mathematic data algorithm is the business, right? But for us, when we're talking about like in the educator side, I think it's also good to be able to understand the way of the business thought, right? So that we can understand. But on the other hand, there's something behind the scene on this, that you will see the future model of the technology that's subscription based or something we have to pay something in return for our privacy. Like for example, if you would like to use something for free, you might have to pay off with some less privacy, or we have to pay for the premium for us to avoid some advertising or whatever. So I think this is a model that we will see in the future on how the data has been collected for the monetization. And also there's another, the other company model of the AI talking about the closed ecosystem, the closed environment, so that they can provide the prediction and recommendation in a different way. So we will see the company working and providing the technology in the different strategy. Like and all of this you will see more about the consumer usage that you may think about. This is, for example, like for some company, they already planning for the segmentation of the consumer usage, like the generative AI, like Bard or ChatGPT. We are talking about the collaboration and communication. In that there will be some kind of product planning, also the infrastructure where the company can also build their own AI with the app developer. So all this part, what I'm showing here is, I mean, on the business side have a very quite a strategic level for the segmentation. And also this shows that in the future, there is a lot of opportunity for the workforce. And for us, actually, we can also thinking about the utilization of the productivity on how we can use, and in the future use what's going on. I can show you in the quick things that on the future, what's happened. I'm just sharing to you here that all the collaboration about the productivity will leading and changing the way of working. So in the past, we might have some curriculum that, you know, teaching, but I think there's a lot of things that should be there. So this is the future of working, and not really a future. It's already start where we just order or use the prompt and everything is just come up automatically. So this is how the business has been driving because of this is the speed of working where people need, and it's already changing the things. It's not only the way that we just write a short word and automatically come with the email. We write some prompt and then it's automatically come up with the slide with the setting picture. It's already there. So that's the part where the business needs the speed and productivity. But for us as an educator, how we can balance the way of working and the learning process, that is what we are talking about. And not only the text and the picture, you will see something that even in the video, we used to discuss about the graphic design or the people who used to learn the program, how to create it. But right now, it's very simple to create the photo automatically, or even the video. Or I would like to share you this video where it's quite interesting for us to see how the Thailand. I would like to start with the, I'm sorry, the voice here. Okay. This is by Dr. Krichai, the director of the Simeo. He just used the prompt put in the program of the in video to introduce his country, which is Thailand. So this is come up with the image, the video, including the subtitle. So this is how easy of this world that is already come up. So in terms of the impact of some of the department are talking about how can we thinking about the way of some department in the faculty that how the things and the curriculum and the instructional design will change. And these applications start to be more and more and more that the objective is just to help the business to grow so fast. And this is how we are talking about the automation tasks already happen, the augmentation of the AI, and the alignment that I just show you. This is already happened in the technology and the business. So that's the challenge in the education industry. But at the same time, I think there is two things that we see, right? That some people also can be able to utilize even ChatGPT or BART to access the information. That's the way that a lot of people can have a chance to learn from all this technology. They have a chance to work and utilize it in a positive way. And also on the back end side of the university, if you think about the same thing like a business thought, talking about the productivity, how can we save time and cost of the teacher's tasks, or we're talking about a lot of automated things that we can reduce and be lean so that we can engage more with the students. So I think in terms of a lot of positive side, people thinking about that. But yes, sure, I think that all of us are still challenged on this is never happened before. We are entering into the phase of the exponential curve of the technology. So because of AI start from the data input and process, how can we control the people who generate the data? And that data is being stored and let the AI to generate and use their imagination. So I think everything is related back to the people and back to the challenge on the educator. Even like we already have the challenge there on the challenge and the pain point in the education system. So with the technology, I think there's a lot of people talking about the data outcome from the AI. How can we verify, triple A, what I'm talking about, is that accurate, is this aligned, or is this appropriate? So there's a lot of, I think this is a time, a very important time for the educator on how we can pass or prepare the people for the future with the AI era. So that's in a nutshell of the presentation I already showed you about the footstep of business, where we also thinking about either how can we prepare the student for the business, or at the same time, how can we follow up the footprint for our productivity, or even there's a lot of pain point. It seems like the business already have the pain point and they utilize the AI to solve it. How can we solving our pain point in education with this technology is another things that quite interesting. And yeah, for sure, I think our role responsibility with this era where the exponential growth of the AI, I think we need to, have everybody discuss, and this is another challenging job during this period of time for preparing for the AI in higher education. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this insight and for this great overview, Dr. Supa. As we have heard, AI is likely to have a major impact on society and, of course, also in education. And it will most probably also simplify work for lots of people. I have to admit, when I saw just your presentation just now, that I'm not so sure I will be very much into AI developed pop music, but maybe I just need to be a little more open-minded. So I would say we now have enough food for thought, and With that, I'm directly handing over to our moderator today, Ruben Janssens. Ruben is an AI researcher at Ghent University in Belgium. He is pursuing a PhD, developing AI for social robots for education, and he is currently supporting our Bologna Hub Peer Support project as an expert. And he was previously a member of the executive committee of the European Students' Union. Dear Ruben, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you very much, Super, as well, for this setting the scene and showing us how AI is already impacting industry, and that we will definitely need to make sure that we prepare our graduates, but also those who have already graduated for this new technological revolution. In order to talk about artificial intelligence and its impact on higher education in Europe, Asia, and beyond, we have with a great panel of 4 speakers, and I'll introduce them one by one. We will start off by Dr. Sharina Yunus. She's currently a Deputy Director of the Enterprise Office at the University Technology of Brunei. She is shaping and implementing strategic initiatives to enhance the innovation ecosystem, and is very interested in advancing education through technology. With us as well, we have Professor Christine Slade from the University of Queensland. There she's at the Institute for Teaching and Learning Innovation, and her areas of expertise are assessment, academic integrity, and as more recently, artificial intelligence in education as well. Then we have Professor Joshua Ellul, Professor of Computer Science and the Director of the Center for Distributed Ledger Technologies at the University of Malta, researching interdisciplinary areas of emerging technologies, such as the techno-regulatory aspects of blockchain, smart contracts, and artificial intelligence as well. And last but not least, we have Bastien de Garda, the membership coordinator of the European Students' Union, a student in bioinformatics and biocomputing at the University of Lille in France, and has been a student representative for 4 years at the local student union, then in the National Union of Students of France, and now in the European Students' Union as well, where he is, among many other things, involved with AI and digitalization in higher education. All right, thank you very much for joining us, all of you, and all of the attendants as well, of course. And let's just kick off, and maybe I will ask the first question to Joshua. Joshua, can you maybe explain to us what do you see as AI in higher education, and what are its main opportunities that it brings, but maybe also the challenges?
Yep. So really, if we think actually about the internet and the wealth of information that the internet really brought, required us, whenever we were undertaking some task, to filter through many different sources, assimilate that information, and then produce something with it. Now, what AI is really doing is allowing for us to not have to digest all of that information, particularly ChatGPT and these new generative models, not to have to go through all the information available, but ask for questions and get information back very quickly. So the main changes that we're seeing from these particular types of models is that students can now start to learn on their own, or learn more on their own through such tools, which means that we can take a lot of the discussion, a lot of learning out of the classroom, and allow for time in classroom to be more focused discussion and academic thought, really.
All right, thank you. Before we continue, I had to explain to you that we have a Q&A system. So the participants, you can see a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. It will already be open now. You can send in questions throughout the entire panel discussion, but we will get to those questions at the end. We have about 10-15 minutes for a Q&A, so we will get there then. All right, so thank you, Joshua. AI basically making use of all the information on the internet and making sure that students can actually access that information by themselves, so that we can maybe focus more on the teaching and learning in the classroom at university. Bastien, maybe what do you think are the key opportunities, challenges, and risks of AI in higher education?
Okay, so basically we think that we have a lot of opportunities regarding the student-centered learning approach, especially because, you know, AI can adapt and help learners to learn at their own speed, and also assess in a synchronous way in order to help people improve the way they can learn things. But we think there are also a lot of threats, especially regarding the learning process of the AI itself, because we have been having this really important issue with AI, that is that the data provided to learn for a model are in a way really biased, and that based on the population you used and the population that you collected the data to train the models can be really different from the population you will use the tool on. And so one of the main threats that we identified as student union is that the models could be not adapted to some population based on the people you use the data of to train the model. So we think that we can really do a lot of things and help improve the student-centered learning, especially regarding underrepresented groups of learners. But we have really to pay attention to the kind of discrimination that not AI can bring, but basically the data set AI was trained on.
And can you explain how that can help, for example, underrepresented groups, which you just mentioned?
Okay, so basically there are a few cases, and we can adapt this rule more generally. But for instance, imagine that you are a foreign student studying in one country, and you are facing issues regarding the language you are learning on. Basically, if you have an AI tool that helps you learn the things that you need to learn progressively, then maybe you can mention this fact, and the tools may be able to help you and adapt to the way the information are brought to you, or the way they are assessed progressively, etc., etc. And it can really help tackle a lot of issues, because the way we learn is like really standardized when we are in a class. But if you adapt the learning process to the different difficulties they can face learning something, then it can really be a really good opportunity regarding that. And can also help tackle discrimination in many ways, or help higher education to be accessible to some public that cannot attend to higher education the way it is built today.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. On one side, maybe helping people that don't speak the language to learn it, maybe to go through this language barrier, but then also to really personalize the education to each person's individual skills. We'll come back to the biased the models and those threats a bit later, but maybe I will first ask Christine as well. What do you see as the opportunities that AI has in education?
Mm-hmm. Well, I first, I guess, wanted to place what happened in Australia when we had the, and the thing about Gen AI at the moment, of course, is the public accessibility, so everyone has it. And that was 1 month out from when we started our academic year. So we didn't have much time. So I guess we had a continuum of people. Some academics and professional staff were going, this is fantastic, I can't wait to try this with students, right down to the other end where they thought this will take our jobs. And so the first thing we had to do was address the affect. So the emotion, there was an emotion that came with it, with the sensationalism of it. And that clouded, what people thought. So those who were confident in digital literacy and other things thought, wow, this is great. If their discipline area had, like, say, journalism or something like that, which already uses AI, they're comfortable with that. But we had other people who, and I'm sort of not just using the binary, we had people right along, but we had other people that were very afraid. And actually, even now, we have students that are concerned that they will make a mistake. So we have people sitting with, this is a fantastic opportunity, which we all embrace, our universities embrace, but we also have what you didn't ask me about, which was the negatives of integrity. So we've had a lot of integrity stuff in Australia. And so we had this tension. And I think we're still carrying that. So I don't think we can just see opportunities without these barriers. So we are all, I suppose, a year on. It's nearly a year on to the day that we actually found out about this. So we're excited. I think we've calmed, and we're now looking constructively. We're sharing different things. I think at the beginning it was all about collaboration right across the world, across sectors, that we had to learn from each other. And we've seen some amazing ways that AI can be used in education. and right here and now things. I mean, there's lots of things we'd love to do if we had the resourcing about personalised tutoring and all the things I've read. But right now, our academics who have come out of COVID exhausted and change fatigued, we need to be simple, I guess, about what we want from them. So, you know, using chat to for formative reasons, to understand. So one of my big concerns is as ethical literacy and, you know, making decisions, which we may talk about later, but students need to be critical of these tools and as well as using the opportunities. So it's kind of complex. There's definitely scope. We definitely want to have our students using it now in their studies, but also prepare them for the future of that. And I guess, you know, it's a learning journey and we're still on it, but I think we are a bit more confident to be able to take it on now than we were, say, 6 months ago. I don't know if that actually really answered your question, but
No, definitely. I think this reaction to the emergence of generative AI is something that we saw everywhere. It was very, very sudden. Even for us in the research field, we kind of knew the technologies were there, but this sudden availability to the public and the immense impact that it suddenly had was very surprising. Very surprising as well. I was just wondering about one thing that you said, that students were afraid to make mistakes. What did you mean by that?
Well, this is just from me talking to students. So we have some students are so they're a bit nervous. They know it's not actually always truthful. So and if you're new students, you've got to, like, we know what our discipline area is, so we can work out whether it's telling truth or not. You know, and the era that may be passing of having incorrect referencing and all of these things. So they're scared that if they touch it to use in assessment, they may fall into some sort of misconduct. So we've had very strong education, I guess, around misconduct. And so now they're seeing that as perhaps I may unintentionally fall into that, or it may complicate what I'm doing. I'd rather just do it myself. So yeah, it's interesting. They're not all jumping to it, you know, and trying to use it for everything.
Interesting that at one side we are afraid that students will use it
there are some
in the
who
wrong
are.
way, but also they are of course, but also they are afraid that they will unintentionally use it in the wrong way. And I'm sure that we will get to that when we will be discussing the ethical aspect and the integrity aspect in a little bit, which of course a very big issue. But first off, Sharina, how do you see that the challenges and risks and opportunities of AI, and what was the reaction to it like in Brunei?
Thank you, Ruben. It was very interesting because I think it actually highlighted the silos within the university itself, because then you do find that, you know, it's not just a generational gap with technology, but there's also an academic gap that exists between the different departments. And that was very interesting because you had some who were willing to go all out on it, and some who were very, very resistant on using that. But then on the other hand, you had students who were, as Christine was saying, that, you know, they were very conscientious. Is this right? You know, how do I engage with this? And then you have some other students who, you know, just upon conversation were already using like something nine generative AI tools to help them with their learning. So so that was very interesting. There was a lot of emotion, definitely. You know, we could see people were trying, some were curious, some were taking on board using it already. So there was a really mixed bag, but and people were trying to figure out what was the best way forward to now incorporate this in education in a very healthy, ethical, proactive way. So what I can see was definitely there's a shift in the role of educators that, you know, trying, particularly with non-native English speakers, and this is really interesting because ChatGPT is, you know, was designed by native English speakers. So for non-native speakers, they're curious, but there is a little bit of a barrier, because if they don't have a good command of the English language, it can be a very arduous task. So they might be turned away from that. But then also in general, students in Asia tend to be very shy as well. And I do see, asking questions. And so I do see an opportunity where, to be able to use ChatGPT in a healthy way in the classroom to break down that shyness, to break down that, they're not wanting to ask questions, but use ChatGPT to have a discourse. But the educator is there to guide them through that discourse. And, with language, there's also the social language in getting them to be able to better pose their question and be more accurate with the context that they're using it for. Because what we notice that if they're writing, ChatGPT is very good, in trying to get through the grammatical errors. That's not an issue. But, when the context of the social language is not clear, it tends to give a lot more errors. So the role of the educator now is to mentor, to facilitate, and to focus a lot more on the higher order thinking skills, which I think is great. It's great. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you said a lot of quite interesting stuff, especially like the culture that students in Asia tend to be shy, and that we can use maybe ChatGPT to break that down. How exactly do you see that?
Well, the Gen Zs especially, they are very, very resourceful. If they're not, if you give them a task, they don't know something, they'll go on YouTube and find out about it, or they go onto their Discord and find some chat group, and they'll do all that. So they're very good with that. But they're still very shy, because there is a power dynamic. There's a difference in the power dynamic in the classroom in Asia, as opposed to, I would say, in the European universities. So that still exists. So I just feel that ChatGPT can sort of help break down that barrier, the power dynamic anyway. So, and students are very, very ready to take that on in class, but they do need that guidance. So the human mentor is absolutely critical in this case.
Yeah, I already see a big role of the changing role of educators here, that they will be the ones coaching and teaching the students how to use the AI. You also mentioned something else that I wanted to ask about, that it's difficult for non-native English speakers to use AI. I'm a bit surprised to hear that, because, for example, ChatGPT was surprising in that it was able to handle many languages. So this doesn't really correspond with your experience then?
Well, when we talk about languages, in Brunei, there's different ethnic groups. So it's not uncommon to find somebody who's 3-4 languages, within a very small circle. And what's interesting is that even in a day, they're switching between different languages, and they're using different expression. Like, for example, in a social context, I'll use this word to mean this. But when I'm in my formal learning environment, it's a different word. It's very interesting. So you've got a social language, and then you've got the more formal language. So that comes into play when they're interacting with ChatGPT. So having somebody who understands all that background to be able to help them contextualize what they really want to ask and put it into, because you're having a discourse with ChatGPT, you want to be able to arrive at a solution, have a very good discussion, or a throwing of ideas. So you don't want to spend an hour just trying to figure that out. So it becomes arduous after a while, and the language barrier comes into play.
Okay, interesting. Hadn't thought or heard about that yet. Okay, let's maybe move to how it's actually being handled at your universities. Maybe we can go back to Joshua as well. How is the University of Malta handling AI? What are can you share some practice examples from your university?
Yeah. So I would say the university was quite quick to react to putting in place university-wide guidelines and principles for all academics. And that's great to have. But at the same time, we shouldn't treat universities as though the whole university is going to be following particular guidelines or principles, because they're just exactly that, guidelines or principles, and it all depends upon the academics at the end of the day. So it's great that the institution has made progress in this regard, but the individual academics now need to see, how do we go about presenting AI to our students? How do we go about using AI? So some good practices that we've been seeing and we've been adopting include using ChatGPT, using various tools in class. So rather than just go through certain material or go through certain tutorials, we say, let's walk through with students using the tools for particular tasks. Let's walk through with students identifying where the answers coming from such tools are incorrect and where we need to challenge the AI or the answers that we're getting from AI. And so I would say we're seeing particularly some good practices. I've heard also of some bad practices, originally banning of AI, discouraging of AI, saying that it will be caught or we'll catch it using our detection tools. The good news is that the university issued guidelines saying that do not sort of worry explicitly about AI detection tools. We're not going to rely on them blindly, because that's the thing. If you rely blindly on an AI detection tool, you may end up telling someone that they plagiarized from AI, but the detection tool itself is AI, and it may have made, well, I guess, yes, it's a mistake because it's all statistical and probability at the end of the day. So I would say we need to really approach this with openness. We need to approach this with humility as well, saying that we do not have the full framework to work with as yet, and we're learning as we go, and we don't want to discourage you from using the tools. So I would say that's sort of a number of different thoughts about what we've been doing at the university.
Interesting. Yeah, so you say that you're kind of showing students in class how to use ChatGPT, what kind of errors it makes for different types of tasks. What kind of tasks are you talking about then?
So it really depends on the teacher. Myself, I've been demonstrating a lot how we can use this for programming, for coding. So this is, well, half the students are tech savvy. We also teach coding to non-tech students, and demonstrating to them that in certain types of tasks like coding, a lot of the times we're spending finding the right answer online. This is what we typically do as coders. 90% of the time we're searching online for the right answer. AI has just helped us find that answer much quicker. Now, what we're showing them is using these tools, we need to verify that answer. We can't trust it blindly. Is it the correct answer? We show them, yes, copy that code, plug it into your code base and see if it works. Is that what we're going to become? Just individuals who copy and paste answers from elsewhere and see if it works? No, we need to somehow come to the conclusion that the answer is fit for purpose. So then beyond coding, I think one of the issues where there's a bit of doubt is, what do we do when it comes to assessment, when it comes to textual assignments, for example? And there's some fear from academics asking, what should we do about AI detection tools? Well, my question would be, what should we do about a particular student asking their friend to write an assignment for them? It's no different in this regard. We should still have other mechanisms in place to verify whether the student rightfully has written that or acquired or somehow learned the knowledge that they need to have, or whether some other individual has provided that information for them. So one message we're trying to get across, or at least amongst certain colleagues, is treat AI just like it's information coming from another person. Do the typical verification processes you would.
Yeah. So also you say using different evaluation methods, basically not only one where it's totally possible that someone else is writing this for you, basically using it in the same way.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned assessments, which I think is on everyone's mind. So maybe we will just continue with that. And I think, Christine, you will have some things to say about that, as you're already have a lot of expertise in assessment, I think, before AI. And now, of course, as well, very hot topic.
Yeah, so just following on what Joshua said then, we had to take a similar view. So in Australia, nearly 10 years ago now, we had a big scandal of students contract cheating, which is the commercial sites online who do write the assessments, individual ones. So you can't use a similarity matching report for that because it's individual. And over a period of time, I think we were one of the first countries to have something like that. That was very in our face as higher education. It was published in the press, in one of the public press newspapers. So what happened then was, so we have a regulator, which is called TEQSA, Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency, and they became involved with that. So we had an ongoing kind of relationship with our regulator, who asks us to be accountable in certain ways. So this is universities plus private providers, not the same for VET or K-12 schooling. They have their own. But for us, we've always had to be accountable. Now, the thing about generative AI is it not only can allow students to cheat in that way, so if they just asked it, you know, had excellent prompting and they could ask it to do whatever they needed and they submitted it. I think a lot of us in Australia would say that is the same contract cheating. If they just took part of it, perhaps not. But the complication comes in working out how do we know that they've got it from there. Now, some students may confess. You may be wrongly accusing students because we know some of the detector tools are not, are not 100% yet, or may never be. So I guess I'm confident in the fact that over years, we will develop an investigative set of properties, say, for example. So our TEQSA website, if anyone's interested in this, has a contract cheating investigators tool. So it's where the properties who used it last, who revised it, we know contract cheating, people use white pages, they have funny references, and we've discovered, all of these things about that. And I think we're discovering that now about Gen AI. So people say things like, oh, look, I could tell the student used it because it's just so generic and it doesn't relate to my discipline. That's the start of that kind of list. Now it will change and everything. So I think eventually, maybe not now, we're using it as an educative thing if we detect, mainly, unless it flags up something else that the student's done. We're not saying because we think you use this, we're going to, investigate you for misconduct. We're looking for other things. So I think over time we'll get there with that. But at the moment, we're using it for education. So if the course coordinator or subject coordinator notices something, they can actually call those students in and just talk to them. So we're kind of doing that to sort of start off. But I know there are some universities in Australia that already have some cases for investigation, but it's usually around a bigger context. Regarding using Gen AI for assessment, so the other side of the coin, we're still exploring that. It's definitely disciplinary focused. I think, so I'm a social scientist by background. We have essays and all that. We probably use it more like, I think it was Josh or someone else said, check out, critique something that it does. Let's work out that it's not 100% foolproof. And so give them ideas to do it. We have 3 bands levels. You can use it in some courses if the course coordinator chooses. You can use it in assessment if they choose, and you're not supposed to use it. So at the moment, it's a bit complicated because we have people who are teaching classes who are not comfortable with letting the students use it. So we're sort of juggling both sides. The school sector in Australia banned it. Like that was their initial reaction, except for one state. That doesn't mean to say that they haven't been looking at it. That's the public school system. Other schools have gone ahead. But I just was in a meeting today and they're going way ahead with preparing students for using it. So they're going to come out of that. But I think that was an initial sort of stopgap to say, we need a breather here. So it's still exploratory. I like what Josh is doing. And I think the sharing of practice of what we can do and what we've tried, the things that didn't work is vital for us all. So we don't have to all go over the same things. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned a few different things. So basically individual educators in individual courses can choose, okay, you can use it here for assessment or not. You can use it here in the course or not. How exactly does that look?
So in the course profile that every student gets, which is like the contract or the, you know, outline of the course, it's written in there what they can actually do. So it's a little complicated for them because they might have 4 of those. I mean, the ideal would be, you know, you can use it, but we've got to remember that our academics and that are not all at that place, you know, they wouldn't have a clue. And so they'd be stressed out and they'd think they'd probably have a lot more cheating cases. And so this is where we came to a sort of a middle thing. I'm sure it'll change later, but and also we do want to protect the students from falling into cheating as well. So there's lots of things involved in that, but that's where we actually fell on the line. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And so in case you detect it, you kind of treat it the same as contract cheating, you say. So do I interpret that correctly as in that's when someone pays someone else to do some an assignment for them, or what exactly does it mean?
Well, in the UK, that would be essay mills, but in Australia, it's contract cheating. The definition is, you know, the family member that Josh mentioned or whoever, that's been around for years. What we discovered through our process as a sector, that is all of these cheating websites who try to persuade students to use their services by telling them it's not cheating. And they have a, you know, we've written a paper about this, that they can tell them the price by page. So in the middle of the night when we're maybe asleep, the chatbot, which, you know, is an AI thing, used not for a good thing here, tells them, how can I help you? And so they sort of lure it in. Some, you know, some would be hardened cheaters, but a lot of the students are vulnerable. And so we're concerned about that. And so before they know it, they've actually bought this thing. But they don't actually cheat until they actually submit it as their own work. That's where, so if they decided they didn't want to use it, they still haven't cheated as such, not for good practice. But so that's what we call contract cheating. It doesn't have to have money involved, but it is a transaction and it is submitting somebody else's work as your own. It's hard to detect. Yeah.
Okay, and so you have a set of tools to kind of detect this is likely something that comes from there, and then if it kind of matches those features, then you will investigate it.
Well, yes, we have a whole structure of that. The markers have ways that they know to look for it very quickly. The course coordinator verifies whether they think there's a problem, and then we have a service role in each school where someone then decides to investigate or not. We have technologies, Turnitin's authorship is one where you can look at all of those things. It is a long process though, so you have to be fairly convinced that there is something there. But yeah, Australia's very advanced in this. I think everyone thinks that maybe we're a lot worse than everybody, but I'm sure you'll find the same thing. It's just that we had to go into it very early on. So a lot of Australian research and practice has come out to help that sector. And I do believe that that will help with Gen AI as well on the negative side of the coin.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting to be able to transfer that experience to this case as well. Bastien, maybe how do you see, how does the students' union see handling cases like this, the integrity aspect?
Okay, so yeah, one of the first thing that happened when ChatGPT was released in higher education is the political science institution in France banning it automatically as soon as it was released. It's one of the first things that actually happened. And so we think it says a lot about how some people see AI as a threat in higher education. So actually we had a lot of debates in ESU to tackle this issue, and here is the conclusion. We think that we should see AI as a tool and not as a threat. So let me explain this. The question is, and we think it reflects on the fact that the way we assess students nowadays is in a way really old-fashioned. Let me explain this. When we want to control the knowledge of one student on one topic, we usually have essays or multiple choices questions. And most of the time, we assess students that way. And now we are afraid because we think that AI can threaten this way of assessing students. But the question is, why do we still assess students that way? Because it's easier, faster, or because we are just used to the way of doing this. And so we have been saying for decades, well, maybe not decades, but let's say at least 10 years, that now that we are in a digital era, we should change the way we assess students and assess knowledge for many different reasons. The first of those is that because we have new tools to learn, because the labor market, as well as the fact of being a citizen, don't have the same requirements, needs than before. Back in the days, we used to need to know a lot of things by heart and to be able to write down all the knowledge we have on one thing. This is not necessary anymore today. Like a century ago, we needed to be able to compute a lot of things on paper or by hand. Nowadays, we need to understand the concept, and then we have computers to do this kind of work. And so we have to admit that the needs for labor market and the needs just as being a citizen in a society really drastically change over the time. And so we think that AI, the rise of AI, should be considered the same way as the rise of computers in society. When computers arrived, when internet arrived in higher education, a lot of people said that we should not use, like, for instance, Wikipedia or online research, and that we should go in the library and look at the books just to find the knowledge, because what we'll find on internet will not be accurate. Turns out 20 years later, we use internet on a daily basis and we never look at a book. This is not the reason why we have mistakes in the way we do things. So we think that we really need to see those two revolutions the same way, and need to reflect on the fact that, yeah, when internet arrived, a lot of teachers actually considered it as a threat, while it was an amazing opportunity to improve almost everything in our daily lives. And we think that AI will absolutely do the same. And so we have a lot of questions about the assessment, and our thought is the following. In the case of, let's say, an essay that you do at home, in the case of a thesis that you will have to hand over and be evaluated, or if you have to write code as a computer scientist, which is my case, let's say that if you use an AI tool and that your work is actually better using that tool, what should we prevent you from using it? Like, let's say that you have access to internet, then what should we ban the AI tool, assuming that they are all accessible on the same basis for every student, of course. Let's say that if you're, I don't know, a medicine student, you want to be a doctor, and then you have to know all the diseases, then we can admit that this is a field in which you need to know a lot of things by heart, and then you will have no access to computers, etc. This is basic knowledge control. Then in those kind of cases, we admit that maybe it can be banned for obvious reasons, because you need to have the actual knowledge. And so our thought on that is really clear, and we have had a lot of debates on this, is that if computers and internet are allowed for an assessment, then AI should not be banned. In the case where we have no access to outside resources, then this is relevant not to have AI allowed in those kind of assessment. And this is where we draw the line, because we think that in the cases where you have no access to outside resources, then this is because this is knowledge control, which is, let's say, legitimate, and that in those cases we may have reasons to ban AI and it's legitimate. But in the other cases, we didn't find any example of where it should be banned, and so we think that it should not be banned. And if your assessment is better because of AI, then let it be. Basically, this is our thought about that. Also, we think that if AI is a threat to one assessing method, then maybe we need to put the assessment method into question, because if an AI can do it, then what is the added value of the exercise for the student and for the job it will have after all the research he will be able to provide in academia, etc., etc. If an AI can do it, then we have no reason to assess it. We need to put in perspective and to put into question the way we assess students and the way we learn, because it evolves really fast. It needs to see a shift in the evaluation paradigm and in the learning and teaching paradigm. But now that AI is forcing this revolution in a way that we have been talking about for 20 years, then we need to embrace it and try not to forbid everything, not to prevent any AI from being used in a fear that it will change everything. We need to change everything and embrace the opportunities. Basically, this is the conclusion of all the discussions we've been having in National Union of Students and in the European Student Union as well.
Yeah, you told me when we were preparing the panel with everyone last week that you were still discussing this at the board meeting right now. So I can definitely imagine that there are very lively discussions about this topic. And yeah, I can follow as well. If calculators were not allowed, then my engineering studies would have been a lot harder as well. So it's probably kind of similar. Yeah, Sharina, how is that happening at your university? How do you look at assessments? How can this be handled?
Yes, that I think at the question of academic dishonesty is on everyone's mind. It's a bit of a cat and mouse situation. You try to find one tool and then there's another tool that comes out, and I think what we realized we could do very quickly was because the university degrees, most of the university degrees here are 4 years at our university, so we change the percentage of the credit for the subject. We made subjects that have more performance tasks where they have to demonstrate their understanding, their proficiency. We gave it a higher credit value. And in the rubrics as well, we included things like, so we try to promote creativity. We want to be able to see, it's a bit more trying to get them to understand that, yes, we want you to use AI tools, but what we really want to get out of you is how well you develop your human-centric skills. Your emotional intelligence when if you're going to be an engineer, and in the AI-driven world, it's a very, very fluid environment. You got to have that higher degree of emotional intelligence. We want to encourage that. So creativity. And then we included things like ethics as well in the rubrics to get them to discuss and talk about it. We also some sort of socio-economic benefits of AI, using AI to solve real-world problems. We encourage that. And then we try to, encourage them to be transparent, as, we encourage ourselves to be transparent about what we use. And we expect that from the students. So what we want is for them to cite the generative AI tools that they use, but also explain to us why do they need to use it, so that we can have an understanding, a window into their mind, what are the challenges that they're facing and how we can actually better understand from their perspective and make that learning journey much more proactive. So, but it's still an ongoing project.
I can imagine, but this transparency in both directions,
Yes.
I think is probably a key word, that both educators and students can be transparent on how do we use generative AI. So you mentioned that you were changing the credit proportions, the types of evaluations, the dimension evaluating it through the rubrics. How does that have an impact on your teaching staff? Because I can imagine that some of these assessment methods take more human resources than we had to use before.
Well, it's very interesting, actually, when we actually changed it and we sort of empower the students to find, it's a bit of a challenge. We try to encourage them to come up with the best solutions. If they, for example, in the engineering department, we encourage them to find real world solutions using AI, but we try to encourage a higher value if they can come up with something that's novel. And for students, what we try to do is link that to how this can actually increase their potential for employability, which is in a lot of students' mind. So we have students who've done really well and, gone to, obtain, very good employment. So we use these students to highlight their success to other students, to encourage them. And so we invite them to give talks, to share their experience. We feature them in our university newsletters and things like that. So that's something we try to attach a value to what they're doing. So this is like a motivating factor for them. And what we find is that we didn't really have to do much in the sense that the students are motivated. They want to come up with the best solution. They want to be out there as a good innovator. So which I found very interesting.
I can imagine that the students see the benefits and the potential of AI and see this as a necessity, that they're able to use it in the labor market later on, so that they're already convinced that they need to learn how to use it. And then you say that you're basically letting them teach each other and encourage each other to use it. Yeah, that's very interesting. But I was wondering about these assessments. So it's not the case in your university that it takes more effort from the teachers to evaluate these competences, these performance tasks, or is that something that you've seen that is a problem, that teachers need to spend more time in doing these evaluations?
Well, I think what I found was that I wasn't doing so much of the paperwork in trying to catch up with a lot of the reports that they were trying to, traditionally it was very, a lot of, the pedagogy was a lot of constructivism, but now it's different. It's curiosity-based learning. So I'm having more conversations with them. I'm having meetings with them. I don't have to see them as often, but they're coming to me asking more questions, and I'm trying to frame those questions so that they can go on to the next level and build it more complex tasks to make it better. So that was very interesting. And I found that, I don't have as much paperwork, but I'm spending more time with them in building a relationship.
Okay, yeah. So less reading reports, less paperwork, maybe less face-to-face time, but more intensive because it's actually conversations, it's actually interactive. Okay, interesting, thank you. One other aspect that we definitely need to talk about is regulation in general. Perhaps Joshua, I can start about this with you. What kind of regulation, what kind of legal frameworks do we need to cope with the challenges of AI and especially in education?
Yeah. So one of the big issues about regulation and AI is we first need to discuss what do we actually want to achieve, and once we know what we want to achieve, how are we going to achieve that, and what specifically are we regulating? So there's been a lot of talk in Europe about regulation of AI, and other jurisdictions are looking into it as well. But the reality is AI is just a type of algorithm that was invented in the 50s, 60s, and nothing much really has changed since the first AI algorithms were proposed. So what exactly are we regulating? Are we trying to regulate all uses of a particular type of algorithm? And if that's the case, when we're talking about let's say systems that are used for aviation or courts or something that really needs to be regulated, does it really matter if you're using an AI-based algorithm or if it's just traditional software? So I think we would really need to frame the question, what are we trying to regulate? And the reason gets a bit more complicated because there are serious concerns about certain types of platforms that we're using, social media platforms that have the capabilities to alter the fabric of society. Now, if we're talking about social media platforms, they're not necessarily AI. They might use some AI, but they're not necessarily AI. So I think the discussion, especially amongst legislators and regulators, needs to be apparent of what it is and why they're regulating. So then once we establish what it is that we want to regulate, why we want to regulate, what are the principles and purposes, we should probably focus then on how are we going to go about doing this? What experts need to come together to do this? And when we look at law and regulation, it's typically legal experts who are the experts in regulating. However, very often our legislators are not well versed in the technological expertise required. So we need to really bring together experts, interdisciplinary team of experts across the board to look into this. So I would say those are my initial thoughts on challenges that we need to focus on rather than diving right into what we should do.
Okay, very interesting. Are there any specific use cases that you think should or shouldn't be regulated then?
Yeah, so I would definitely say, so rather than focusing on AI, what we should focus on are the sectors and the uses of software. If we're using such software and automated systems in areas that are safety critical, that can have material damage, loss of life, something that has an effect on society, that's where we should consider regulation. The next question is, do we need technology-specific regulation? So for example, if we're talking about discriminatory purposes, whether AI is used to award an insurance policy or not. We've had non-discriminatory laws for decades. Why do we need laws specifically to say that AI should not discriminate? The laws already say it should not discriminate. So we just need to make sure that whatever tools we're using are fit for purpose within the particular sectors. So where do we definitely need regulation? Health, aviation, all these industries where we've already had regulation. The question now is, how do we make sure that they're fit for purpose? And that's a slightly different argument though.
And what about education?
So, okay, yeah, education, indeed. So should we have harder regulation above our academic institutions, imposing how we should be using these tools? I'm not sure about that. And I think Christine might be in a better position to answer this, because it seems like Christine has a lot of experience from, and Australia has a lot of experience from the contractual world. And to me, AI is just another person. So why not treat it the same way? So when it comes to regulation, in that regard, I think Christine would be in a better position.
Well, then you've perfectly done my job. We'll go to Christine for your perspective. You're still muted, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you, Joshua. It's a good question, because earlier in the year we had the K-12 school sector wanting to, write some principles and a framework around use. And I was one of the academics that was invited to come. So they've taken a more national approach, because each state has its own systems, and they've, worked through a lot of principles, etc. Now at that, copyright is still something that's very difficult to put a finger on. If my artistic work is used in Gen AI, well, who's going to know? And, so there's all of that rights, but there's also rights about when do you cite it, when don't you? So that to me is still a very mixed space. We've sort of, told students in a way, this is how we want you to reference it. And journals are starting to do that too, but it's not a solved issue. And that is a really complex one. Now, what happened here too was that our federal government asked one of the standing committees of Parliament to run a inquiry into generative AI use in Australian education. And the way they do that is they ask everyone to submit something. So all the top bodies right across education have put in submissions. And they go through each of those and they sift through what is the things that everyone has had a chance to say, this is my pain point, this is what works for us, and everyone worked really hard to put things into that. So we're still waiting for that. But I think that's an interesting way to go, because you're getting a lot of diverse opinions from different levels of education. Our regulatory body has taken another approach. So they're doing more like what you were saying, Josh, for education, is that they got together a group of experts, and then they get other experts to write things. But this group, and it's one of the resources we've shared with the participants, it's just come out, and it's around principles and propositions for using Gen AI in assessment in higher education. So it's not prescriptive. It's very hard to be prescriptive, but it does give the principles of what we should be aiming for. So they've taken that kind of span. Now, what they're going to do in the future is then ask every institution, they've already said this, show us your credible action plan for actually making that work. So I guess you can't have regulation until you really understand what's happening. And the corporate world here has got some. I mean, even globally, years ago, they've had some you know, UNESCO had something and other people had things to try and bring it together. I guess one of the fears of higher education is we don't want the tech companies to tell us what it is that they want to regulate without us having a say. And I think there's a bit of feeling that we want to understand this enough so that we can say, can we have privacy over our systems? You know, can we protect what's put into these systems? Because that's a worry. Do we put sensitive information in these systems? They're using it for this and that. So, you know, cybersecurity, which was mentioned before, all of these issues, they're all around that sort of, do we need to tie that up in some sort of legal way? What is best practice? You know, so I think that's going to go on for a while yet. But we do need to be proactive about it, and we need to understand what each other are doing to keep on it, because otherwise we will just be told this is how your enterprise. Well, our enterprise systems, like, you know, from Microsoft and all of that, they've got it all in now anyway. So, you know, perhaps if the university's got an agreement there, that's a bit more tied up. But if you're a small institution and you don't necessarily have that bespoke stuff, what protection do you have if something goes wrong? So yeah, a lot of issues, and I think we will need some regulation. It's just how much. Like we say, you know, Bastian said, we want to be able to use this for as a good tool. You sound like you have really mature students too, Bastian. They're all going to be, you know, really wanting to use it for furthering their learning, which is fabulous. And I'm sure most students do, you know, but it's just all this other stuff around it that comes with it that we have to make sure we're doing right for the students.
Yeah, of course, we have a very diverse student population as well. So how it's being uptaken will differ widely. I think also from maturity from year to year. If you're just coming out of high school, the master students, further education as well. Yeah, just a very small question. Is inquiry from the Parliament, is that specifically about education or generative AI in general in society?
No, it's in education.
In education.
You can actually look that up. It's the federal government of Australia in parliamentary inquiry into generative AI, use of generative AI in Australian school systems.
Okay, yeah.
And you can read all the submissions if you've got nothing else to do to go to bed.
Yeah, well, thank you. You've shared some resources already with us as well that have been shared through the chat, so that can be very interesting, I think, for everyone. We don't have a lot of time yet, but I still want to go to Sharine and to Bastien as well. How is the regulatory aspect in Brunei, in Asia in general, in the region? How is that there?
I think, yeah, that we're still trying to understand, you know, try to strike a balance between the benefits and the risk of generative AI. And I think the issue is, you know, you've got the National Data Protection Policy Act, but then how do you translate that down to the organizational level? That's still a challenge, and you know, and all the different departments and everything. So we've set up a small committee at the university. We're trying to share what we know so far with other universities, and you know, share best practices as well. Yeah, but I think that we'll have to see and collect more data, try to understand more. I think, you know, we still don't yet have a good understanding what is the long-term effect or impact of AI in higher education. So I think there is a real need for us, you know, in order not to be told by the tech companies who are, you know, very much profit-driven, we need to collaborate and share data, share information on how best to move forward. Is absolutely critical.
Yeah, this sharing, this collaboration, I think was mentioned all the way in the beginning of the discussion as well. And that's precisely why we're doing this. So yes, finally, Bastien as well, what are your thoughts about the regulatory aspect?
Yes, so the thought of the European Students' Union on that is really clear, is that we definitely need a regulation on the European level for AI. Also, it needs to be fast and flexible, because, you know, when we talk about the European Union, the thing is, the process takes years to finally make a decision, and so we cannot afford this in a when we try to address AI. So we need a general framework for one simple reason, which is that AI creates a lot of threats on a society level. We need to address the intellectual property issue. We need to address the misinformation and the content creation issue as well. And those are definitely things that we need to tackle just for the well-being of society. I mean, it makes sense. I think I don't really need to explain this. On education, more precisely, we are facing the same issue we face every time we try to regulate something on education, which is that the European Union cannot legislate on education, and the competencies are maybe shared between different ministries based on the local context of the country. So trying to have a framework on that is really complex. Also, the second issue is that we have different levels of institutional autonomy in different countries. And so this is actually an issue we had while debating that within ASEM, because the Nordics country, for instance, would tend to have more autonomous institutions, while in the South, it depends. It's mitigated, let's put it that way. So we will have to face those issues as well. But we think that we definitely need a legal framework to address the following issues, and especially regarding education. The most important thing is that we think that AI should not be used or should have a support role in every decision-making process that involves human resources or humans in general. Like, for instance, we think that it's okay to use AI for a lot of different reasons, but imagine that you would have to sort students, to class students, to cluster students in different groups. Let's say that you want to hire someone or those kind of stuff. We want to draw a really clear line about this, because we think that AI should not make the decision nor give a first decision that needs to be approved by a human. We think that regarding human resources and human management in general, that those decisions should be made by humans. That for instance, we should not have any kind of clustering of students based on AI decisions, etc., because we think that it could lead to really clear discrimination issues. And so it's one more reason why we need a really clear legal framework, and we wish that we had a binding framework for the countries, because we fear that we may face like really big discrimination issues if AI is used in the decision-making process for human management, for instance.
That is a very clear line, saying that AI cannot just make decisions on itself about humans, basically, and wanting fast and flexible regulation from the European Union. Those are exactly its keywords: fast and flexibleness. So I share your idealism, but let's see where it actually goes. Okay, well, yeah, thank you. We don't have a lot of time left before we go to Q&A, but maybe I will just do one last round about what are each of your key words, maybe 3 key things about the interplay of AI and teaching and learning, maybe something that we haven't mentioned yet that you find really important. Maybe Sharina, we can start with you. What are like maybe 3 things or less or more that you think are necessary for integrating AI in teaching and learning in our higher education institutions on the long term?
I think for me it would be adaptability. That is to be able to seamlessly integrate the evolving AI technologies into teaching and learning, but ensuring that the adaptability to changing the educational landscape, having a collaborative learning ecosystem, that encourages collaboration between AI technologies, educators and students, enhancing their overall learning experience. And I would also like to say that, to promote the idea of lifelong learning, not only for students, but also giving opportunities for academic staff with a continuing professional development. I think this is really important as well. So that's my key takeaway.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Joshua?
So I would just add, I hope that we start hearing the terms or seeing it as a useful tool, more critical thinking and information or source verification. I think those are the main concepts that I want to see emerge in the next while.
As a useful tool for?
Just that we see it as a useful tool, that students are more geared towards critical thinking and also information and source verification when using AI.
Yeah, so that we also teach students to verify the sources if they're using AI. Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. Christine?
I think that we need to recognize that assessment principles are constant and they're not going to change. And that's probably the foundation on which we can sort of test whether something's right in principle. I think we need to be confident. So we've got our literacy up as far as, that is, but we're confident to try some new things based on our principles. And I would like to see some ethical curriculum, not, but scenario-based maybe for students to be put in.
Okay, thank you. Bastien?
Yes, I would say inclusivity, because even though we need to embrace the opportunities, we need to still face the hard reality, which is that AI is based on the data on which it's trained. I would say student-centered learning, with the hope that it could make higher education more accessible to the underrepresented groups and people facing difficulties in the learning process. And the last but not least, I would say transparency, because and let me be clear on that. Even we don't think that the algorithm would need to be more transparent, etc. We have been hearing that a lot. Not a lot of people will be able to explain an AI algorithm, because it's like pretty complex. Only neuroscientists specialized on the topic can do that. But we need to be transparent on the whole process of using AI. We need to know if we use an AI tool, on what data is it trained, who developed it, on what framework is it used, and to what. And we think that the process of using AI should be really transparent, for the sake of reproducibility in academia, for instance, or for the sake of trying to tackle discrimination if it happens.
Okay, thanks. Maybe just before we go to Q&A, something that was just mentioned now in this round, and that was also in our preparation, is about training staff as well. And Sharina, you mentioned lifelong learning as well. How do you think we can do that, training staff and everyone in a lifelong way, not just the students that are in our universities right now?
I think that if we want to really promote the idea of lifelong learning, especially in the age of AI, where the technology is moving so fast, and with all that's happening with Sam Altman stepping down as a CEO of OpenAI and coming back in again, and then there was talk of ChatGPT-5 coming around the corner. I think sooner than not. So that journey to promote the concept of lifelong learning, it's not just at the university level. It has to start way back, even at the primary, secondary level. We have to promote what we call learn agility and what we call learnability skills. So because even for myself, who's in engineering, the amount of knowledge, that the speed at which you need to consume all this information and learn that and be able to take that and use it or understand it and apply it, it's incredibly fast compared to when I was doing my postgrad studies. So imagine what the younger generation will face. So there is a real need to have, there's a speed, there's a question of flexibility, how do we really enhance problem solving skills, and, the adaptability, because when they are in the work environment, the technology can change at any time, and that will have a drastic impact on their job scope. So they're going to need, a couple of years, a few years back, we needed a web designer, but that's no longer necessary with all the AI tools that are available. So that job has become now obsolete. So they're going to have to now develop new skills to survive in that new work environment. So, but then that goes all the way, that pedagogy question goes all the way back down. So I think there is a question of, trying to promote that concept of learnability and learn agility, being more agile.
Yeah, of course. Looking just at higher education sometimes maybe too narrow a view, and we definitely need this interplay between the different levels. Also, Christine, one thing that you mentioned is ethical curriculum. We didn't talk a lot. We talked a lot about academic integrity, but not a lot about ethics. How do you see it that we need to teach students this ethical aspect, maybe shortly?
Well, I've been doing some research around professionalism as well as integrity, and I think we need to strengthen the links for students, that they understand that academic integrity is not just a thing while you're a student. It actually connects to professional life and personal ethics. We have modules already that deal with sort of scenario basis. So perhaps it's something like that. But I think it's also a recognition that, we don't all have the same ethical values perhaps, but we do need to know when there's actually a problem. And then what to do about it and how bad is it? So that's sort of critical thinking around when knowing when there's a problem. I think that's probably the lowest standard of things that we should know.
Yeah, I see already that we had a question from the Q&A that's kind of linked to this, so I'm already going to ask it. How do you think that students can exercise and strengthen their critical and research competences in this situation where data can be found for them, be kind of like sorted, summarized for them? Christy, maybe you can continue the answer. You're still muted. Yeah.
I've got my voice back, but I've also got a cough with it. So I'm sort of battling that a bit. Yeah, well, that's true, isn't it? Things are easy to get. But you see, personal things like, well, just take research skills, right? They're not easy to get. They're hard work if you really want them. You can look up something, or get a summary, but that's not research skills. There's a whole understanding of that, how to make decisions about whatever your type of research is. There's a lot which comes, if you've done a PhD or something like that, from the mentoring that you get as well as reading scholarship. So I see, well, professionalism is another one, but part of that is integrity. So how do you know how to act as a professional? You might think you do, but in the times that I've worked, you've got to understand a lot of things that are tacit when you come to a workplace. And if you really had any understanding of having to make ethical decisions, because you just haven't really thought about that, I think that we're doing a disservice to the students if we don't already do that. So I guess it's still a conversation. I've thrown it out to a few people to say, hey, we need to think more about this. But we do know from our research, health professional students and teacher education students, they know that there's certain things that they shouldn't do, for example, on social media, but they have difficulty working out the nuances of that, plus also the difference between their personal persona online and their professional persona online. So, or the workplace has a different code to them. And so it's a really important thing that we need to help them make those sort of decisions while they've got sort of safety around them. But anyway, that's my view. I think that's a big one. It's connected to digital literacy. because, you know, if you can't get onto a computer, or which we didn't touch too, you know, like access to hardware, a lot of equity issues there. But I think this is just another part of that. But it is becoming more obvious to me that students don't really think that's kind of important in that little time that they're with us, or some students. And so I'd like to see a bit more curriculum in some way. It might be different across different places to emphasize that.
Yeah. You also mentioned that you kind of learn through mentoring, and that very much links with what Sharina said, this more conversational, interactive approach to learning, that we learn a lot of those competences through that.
Yeah.
We see that in research as well with master students, with PhD students. Like you learn so much from your supervisor, from the people that you're surrounded with, and that you're collaborating with.
I guess, you know, in undergrad, for example, you can't do that. Well, we can't do that in our system, but we have, you know, pedagogies like case-based learning, problem-based learning. We have academic integrity modules that new students must do, very much based on scenarios of something that might happen to you while you're studying. We have examples of poor ethics now with some of our big firms that has just gone through accounting firms. So there's ways that we could do it. I think, from what I understand, we obviously have ethics in professional degrees in that, but I remember back, seemed to have more emphasis on ethics when I was doing things to what we have now. So whether we've cribbed it out, or so maybe another look at that to say, have we got enough here for the students?
Okay, well, interesting. Another question that was sent in is, what about less developed countries that have less access or no access to these technologies? Also, the fact that it's a few and mostly American companies that have the financial and technical resources to invest in AI, is that something that might actually broaden the education gap? Is there anyone who wants to answer this question?
I'll just add one thing to it, and then someone else can have a go. But I noticed that even in Australia, we have a lot of, you know, we're a big country per our population, and we have a lot of, so that's a problem for infrastructure. So while we have broadband and different things, it's not the same access for everyone. So people in rural and probably have the same other places, but we have schools where students cannot get on the internet reliably. How do we give them assessment with AI? You know, so we've got it in all levels, I suppose, socioeconomics, but also location, and then we have developing countries. So you have to be careful about that. You know, if you're going to set things that the students have to be able to use these tools, we forget that we've even in our own backyards have got people that cannot do that.
Bastien, yeah.
Yeah, well, we decided not to have policy about that, but we have had a lot of debates. And what I can say is that students are concerned about the fact that it's only a few companies that at the moment have the monopoly of AI tool. That, I mean, when we talk about AI, what people hear is ChatGPT, Board, Deeper, those kind of stuff. And I mean, not the other tools. So some companies have the monopoly on that, and so people are afraid of this, actually, and especially students, because they are well aware of the human rights issues that we can have regarding big companies that can have a monopoly and use some poorer countries to have like more financially accessible labor to label data, for instance, is something that we really discussed within ASEM. So we are really waiting to have some alternative tools to those monopoly tools. Let's put it that way. We want to be able to compare on a lot of different criteria, including a human rights approach, the different tools that we can use for higher education. So we don't have the solution to this, of course, because only massive investment can provide tools like this, but we wish to have more diverse possibilities, let's say.
Yeah, fine. I may, Ruben?
Yeah, sure.
So I definitely agree with Christine in that it's an infrastructure issue, first and foremost, for getting access. Now, whether we're using AI systems or other types of systems, we first need to have access to the internet. Once we have access to the internet, the question of who has monopoly over these types of systems, whether it's Western or American companies or other. It's definitely an issue, a geopolitical issue. However, the approach that we're seeing in Europe is to regulate the space. And what worries me there is that we are creating barriers to entry for younger startups to get into the space and allowing for the big tech that is already there to abide by and lobby for regulation that is easier for big tech to abide by. My worry is that whilst we need to worry about certain issues of accessibility, inclusivity, and so on, we may be creating barriers to keep these companies from not flourishing in our countries. And that couldn't be even a bigger barrier to having local innovation. And so we need to find the right balance.
Yeah, definitely an issue that we need to think about in the regulatory aspect as well, of course. Sharina, also any thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, I can, see how there is a real AI race. And it's as Joshua said, it's geopolitical as well. It's obvious that, the person that can, use AI, create AI algorithms or foundational model or expert models that they can corner have a dominate or be a monopoly in the economy. And that's very real. So that will cause the gap between the rich. It will widen the gap between the rich and the poor. There is no doubt about that. But I do see hope. I do see people who are, there's groups of people who are promoting AI for good. And they are using AI to help, how can we use AI to help alleviate poverty? How can we use AI to reach the SDG goals faster? Can we expedite in reaching our 17 SDG goals faster, which will be good for everyone? So I think that's a good focus to start with, where people are collaboratively working towards that, and for the greater good of humankind. So that's something that needs to be promoted. But yeah, that gap really does exist, and until we are able to successfully address that, whether it's a knowledge gap, which is real, because the reality is AI experts are not, they're in short supply, and I do find that we're in a situation where sometimes the university is also having to compete with these big corporations because they're not being transparent with the research that they're doing. And that makes it difficult for us because we need to produce the students that are going to be better adapted to the AI world. And they're conducting their own research. So sometimes you find that we're not able to secure research students because they're all getting, all working for those big tech corporations and doing the research there, which didn't really exist before. So that's a very interesting relationship. So that relationship needs to be, addressed, that sort of gap that needs to be addressed as well. And
thank you. I think that's a perfect note on which we can end. We need more AI experts, but we also need more transparency from everyone involved in the process. And that also comes back to what we said in the education as well. Transparency there may be a key word. With that, our time has finished, and I want to thank all of you very much for this very interesting discussion. Thank you, Sharina, Joshua, Christine, and Bastien. Thank you to the audience as well for being here. And before I give the words to David again, thank you as well to everyone at the AAD and the ASEM Education Secretariat for the flawless preparation and organization of this meeting.
And thanks to you, Ruben.
Hey, thank you very much, Ruben, for the great moderation of this very interesting panel. And of course, I would also like to thank our keynote speaker and our panelists, and of course, you, the audience, for the active participation. I saw that you wrote a lot in the chat. The video recording of the seminar will be made available soon on the ASEM Education Secretariat's website. And well, yeah, once again, thank you very much. And with this, I close the meeting, and I wish you all a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Goodbye.